Hello, welcome to today's video diary for Finding My Way with Pi, Purpose, Intention, and Emotion. I am Pi, and today I want to carry on the examination of the topic that I spoke about in the last video diary, which was evolving beyond my old self. So I have this I had this pattern, this like template or this blueprint, if you will, for how I lived. And that pattern was born from trauma. Now, working really hard and throwing yourself into your work to the detriment of your own well-being and potentially your relationships, it's not a healthy thing. When you say it out loud like that, it's like, oh, well, of course not. That's not a healthy way to live life. It's imbalanced. It's taking one thing to the extreme instead of in moderation. And yet, I always felt I had to live that way. It felt like a matter of survival. And I would always feel frustrated. And hubby and I had conversations about this before. Why do you think you need to be at work until 7 p.m. or 9 p.m.? But why do you have to throw yourself into something at 200% when 100% or 75% is just fine? It actually meets the requirements of the thing that you're trying to do or trying to work on. And I would just feel frustrated and say, you just don't understand. I have to. There's no other way. It's like, in order for me to survive, I have to do it this way. Which, had I understood myself enough, I would have heard the echo of post-traumatic stress in that. I would have heard the echo of trauma in that response. That was an overreaction to something. So today I'm hearing myself, I'm hearing the words I'm using, I'm understanding where that pattern came from, what it was born from, and I'm beginning to heal from that trauma that I had run from my whole life, which ironically, burying myself in my work was a way to stay numb. It was a way to not have to deal with it because I was too exhausted. I was too busy to have to dig into that can of worms. I didn't have to get still because when I got still, I would feel sad and I would feel it bubbling up. My body held on to that trauma. And then when I burnt out and left my corporate career, needing to heal, I was quite shocked by what ended up coming up when I actually was still, when I actually took the time to heal and to pause and to turn inward and to self-reflect, because clearly what I had done up to that point just had not worked. And so what bubbled up was needing to heal all of these past hurts. What bubbled up was needing to become aware of the pattern, to become aware of the old me, what it was rooted in, and then to be able to intentionally design what I want the new me to feel like. I'm still me. I can't be someone other than me, but I can own and accept what came before instead of suppressing it and say, I did that. I lived that way for a while. It worked for me until it didn't. And it's time for something new. It's time for a new approach. It's time to evolve, which is where I am now. Now, this brings me to a pattern that I've had since I grew into an adult. I moved away from home. I moved states away from home. It was not easy to get back home to visit very often, and I'll have to be honest, I didn't want to, not because I don't love my family who's there. I love them deeply. I didn't want to because going home picked the scabs off of all the trauma that I had suppressed and buried and did not want to heal from. Christmas time in particular is very difficult for me. I get depressed every year at Christmas. And I try to keep myself very busy so I don't have to stop and dig into this. That deep well of sadness and depression gets worse if I go home for Christmas. And I always felt like I could not admit this or say this because I felt like it would almost be an insult to my dear sweet family who is there. And again, I love them very much, but this was inside of me and I didn't know what to do with it or heal from it. And I was terrified to look at it, to dig into the why. Well, it's up. The time's up. There's no more avoiding. There's no more suppressing this. It is time to admit it and to approach this upcoming Christmas in a different way. Why? Because now I'm ready. Why? Because we're going back home for Christmas thanks to the gift from my brother and my family to fly my family back home for Christmas so that we can all be together. And guess what the root of that was? My Mimi, my hummingbird, someone who was so incredibly meaningful to me in my life. She passed away about 1.5 years ago. And during her celebration of life, I'm very emotional about this. During her celebration of life, as all of us were together as a family and loving being together, we all acknowledged how much we missed seeing each other, and we agreed that this Christmas we would come back. That feels so rooted in the spirit and the essence and the love of my Mimi. I'm actually wearing my hummingbird earrings today. And I'm realizing that the impetus of going back home for Christmas this year, all of that PTSD and sadness, it's welled up in me, but this time it feels like an invitation. This time it feels like an opportunity to actually heal. And it feels like my Mimi extending her arms and her hands saying, it's okay. It's okay to come home. It's okay to acknowledge this, to let it go. Wow. I didn't. Well, of course it's going to be this emotional, but this is really hard. I'll tell you what comes up for me every time I think about going home for Christmas. My mind just replays and replays and replays this one moment that just felt like such a dart to my heart. There was one Christmas where I hadn't seen my dad for weeks, and we were supposed to go to his mom's house, my Meemaw's house, every single Christmas by 10 a.m. And he would meet us there, and that's when we got to see my dad on Christmas morning. And he was so late that year. And when he did show up, he was so drunk and high. And remember, my dad was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And by this time, I'd already gone through a whole lot of trauma. But I still loved my dad dearly. And seeing him like that felt like it was like watching him slowly die. I was terrified to see him get in a car and drive away. I was hurt that he had been, on some bender for days, maybe weeks, and that he was in this state. Clearly had not thought about Christmas or family at all. Showed up late like it was a party while we were all terrified about his well-being. And I wasn't even old enough to drive. I was young. I just remember Christmas feeling like this. We're all sitting in this painful reality, yet nobody's really talking about it. And we're all afraid. And it just hurts because you're looking at someone like your own father and you know what you wish that they could be for you, but they're just not. Christmas just hurts. It just makes me think about the pain and the fear and the discomfort of those times and those times with my dad. Now, I know I must have developed some pattern around the holidays around this time. It really doesn't matter where I am. I feel deep sadness over the holidays, and I know it's rooted in that memory and in that moment. And I believe that in that moment, I locked into something, that there's some type of, there was just some trauma and hurt there that I have not resolved. I don't think I'm going to do it right here in this moment, but the significance of curiously examining what I'm feeling right now is such that this is the first time I've allowed myself to acknowledge it. And I've allowed myself to peek under the hood into that hurt and discomfort and sadness, and to actually give it a name instead of suppress it, so that I can accept it finally and let it go and heal from it. And I hope for this Christmas that it will just be healing, that it will be what I always wished it would be, that it never felt like, because this feeling of what I'm describing to you and how I'm remembering this memory of my dad, that's what it always felt like. Maybe not my entire life, but certainly the parts of my life where I experienced a whole bunch of trauma all at once as a young teenager. And I think all of that's just like locked in my body. And so opening up and peeling back those different layers and healing from it is like opening all of the things to own them and to accept and give myself some compassion and grace, and to finally stop running, and to just sit in it and let it burn. I'm burning down what I wished my dad would be for us, and just accepting what he was. I'm accepting that it sucked, but it was enough. It was enough for me to figure out how to live my life and survive and thrive. And it's part of who I am. And I think if I can acknowledge and heal from some of this trauma and hurt and pain, then I can maybe remember that there was some good too, and that it did coexist, even though that doesn't feel like it's possible. It did. And to relax my grip on myself so that I can heal instead of holding a lid on this so tightly. I just need to speak my truth. You know, what harm would come in telling my family I get really depressed around Christmas? I think about my dad a lot and I have a hard time about it because there's trauma around it. So this is healing for me to be with y'all now, and I'm sorry if there are some moments where I may seem sad. Don't do anything differently. I'm okay. Just know it's not you. And I'm going to soak in the good moments of all being together, and my kids getting to see their cousins, which they've not seen enough in their lifetime. I'm sure I'll be coming back to this topic again in the future. I don't feel like I've completely rooted it out. I've identified the, I think the seed of where the sadness comes from. Now, I'm gonna let sadness do its work and be the vehicle for letting go. And I'll share what I learn when I learn it. Wow. Okay. What an incredibly transformative journey these last 9 months have been doing these daily video diaries. Just what will it look like after this year-long experiment is done? I don't know, but I'll tell you what, my professor said, made a comment today that self-growth and transformation, it is not a revolution, it is an evolution. And I really feel like I have personally evolved over these last 9 months. And to kind of, to use an analogy that I actually learned about from Confucius and Confucianism this last week, it's like taking jade or a stone and grinding it down and shaping it and honing it. So it's still me. It's just I am becoming more me, more honed, more centered in myself and in my truth. So it is the best way I know how to describe it. It's becoming. I am becoming more me so that I can live my life fully and feel good about it, which is what my goal was at the beginning. So I did not understand what the path and the journey would be like, but it's starting to be clear now. It's amazing. So thanks for being with me on this journey. I'm so glad that you're here, and I hope it helps you too. I'll see you tomorrow.